Lead local. News Talk 1110 and 99.3 WBT.
Hot. It's 5:04 and welcome into a Friday edition of the Carolina Journal News Hour. News Talk 1110 99.3 WBT. I'm Nick Craig. Good morning to you. We start with some breaking news out of Washington, D.C. this morning. President Donald Trump yesterday signed a memorandum directing the Secretary of the Interior to submit a plan within 90 days to assist the Lumbee tribe to obtain full federal recognition. Granting full federal recognition to the Lumbee tribe, which is centered and based in Robeson County, would provide them with access to federal services and benefits. This includes health care through the Indian Health Service and eligibility for federal funding programs supporting housing, education, and economic development. Now, this is a promise made, promise kept. During a rally back in September of last year in the Wilmington area, Trump promised full federal recognition, saying, quote, "Today I am officially announcing that if I am elected in November, I will sign legislation granting the Great Lumbee the Great Lumbee tribe federal recognition that it deserves." Earlier this year in 2025, Representative David Rouser out of the 7th Congressional District in North Carolina introduced the Lumbee Fairness Act in Congress, which would go through the process of granting full federal recognition and benefits to the tribe. The memorandum, which, as I mentioned, was signed by Trump yesterday, claims, quote, "Considering the Lumbee tribe's historical and modern significance, it is the policy of the United States to support the full federal recognition, including the authority to receive full federal benefits." In a signing in the Oval Office yesterday, where the president signed this piece of legislation, he had this to say in response to the signature.
Next, sir, we have a presidential memorandum encouraging departments and agencies in your government, including the Department of the Interior, to promote federal recognition of the Lumbee tribe of North Carolina.
I love the Lumbee tribe. So this is their first big step, right?
This would be a huge step for them, sir.
Yeah, they were with me all the way. They were great. North Carolina, Lumbee tribe.
He then went on to sign that order again, directing his Secretary of the Interior to have a plan on his desk within 90 days. North Carolina Representative Jared Lowry, who is in the House, serves Robeson County as also a member of the Lumbee tribe, told Carolina Journal last night, quote, "I'm thankful for President Trump continuing to keep his promises to bring justice to the Lumbee people." U.S. Senator Thom Tillis, amongst other individuals, commenting on X, saying, "Now Congress must do its job, fulfill its promise, and pass the Lumbee Fairness Act to make this federal recognition law." The United States House, over the last couple of years, has repeatedly voted in favor of granting the Lumbee tribe full federal recognition. However, the U.S. Senate has yet to approve the measure. North Carolina granted state recognition to the Lumbee tribe all the way back in 1885, while the tribe did gain some partial federal recognition in 1956. They have yet to achieve that full federal recognition that they have long pursued. So that is one of our top breaking stories this morning over at CarolinaJournal.com. The headline, "The Lumbee tribe on its path for full federal recognition." We'll keep an eye on that in the coming weeks and months, as it appears that the full federal recognition is imminent for the Lumbee tribe centered down in Robeson County. It's now 5:08. You're listening to the Carolina Journal News Hour on News Talk 1110 and 99.3 WBT. We continue to track details out of the high-stakes race for the North Carolina Supreme Court. We'll jump right into an update this morning with Mitch Kokai from the John Locke Foundation. Mitch, you've been walking us through this process really since the turn of the year. What's the latest news that you've got this morning?
Well, remember, this case is moving on a couple of parallel tracks. One is in the 4th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in Richmond, and oral arguments are scheduled in the case there on Monday. So there are some court filings that are going on in preparation for the oral arguments for the 4th Circuit. And the issue for the 4th Circuit is whether this case belongs in a state court or in federal court. If the 4th Circuit agrees that it belongs with Democrat Allison Riggs, the State Board of Elections, and ideological allies of Riggs on the left that the case belongs in federal court, they could issue some sort of ruling calling on a federal district judge, Richard Myers, to have the case returned from the state Supreme Court to his court for the federal courts to deal with it. It remains to be seen whether that's going to be done. But the biggest thing that really happened this week in this case was that the state Supreme Court decided to kick the case at the state court level back to a trial court. When Jefferson Griffin wanted to block the State Board of Elections from certifying Allison Riggs as the winner in this race, he filed a complaint directly with the state Supreme Court on December 18th. The following day, the State Board of Elections had the case removed from state Supreme Court to federal court, and then later, Judge Myers kicked the case back to the state Supreme Court on January 6th. The next day, the Supreme Court issued a stay blocking any sort of action from the State Board of Elections, and then set out a schedule for the various parties to add some briefs. We expected that there was going to be briefing lasting through Friday. But instead of that, there was kind of a surprise on Wednesday when the state Supreme Court decided that, no, we don't need any more briefing. We're just going to issue our order. And they decided to send the case back to a superior court because they said that's where Jefferson Griffin should have started this process. He shouldn't have gone straight to the Supreme Court. He should have gone to a superior court. But the interesting thing about this order is that it really prompted lots of different thoughts from the various justices. There are 7 members of the state Supreme Court. Allison Riggs couldn't take part because it's her seat. It directly affects her. But of the other 6 justices, 5 decided to write something about this in this latest order. There's the order itself that kicks the case back to the Superior Court. There is a concurring opinion from Chief Justice Paul Newby that basically defends Jefferson Griffin going through this process, saying that he's not trying to disenfranchise voters. He's trying to ensure that only eligible votes are counted. So basically, Newby is calling out those who are engaged in hyperbole and talking about what Jefferson Griffin's doing. Then there was a dissent, partial dissent from Anita Earls. She agreed that the case did not belong in the Supreme Court, but she also wanted the court to get rid of its temporary stay, saying that basically puts the thumb on the scales with the idea that there's something wrong with the way the ballots were counted. So Earls dissented. And then we also saw opinions from Phil Berger Jr. and Tamara Beringer. Phil Berger Jr. said, hey, it's pretty clear cut what needs to be addressed in this case, but we're not the court that should be doing it first. It should be done first by a superior court. And then Tamara Beringer basically said, look, I agree with everything else that's been said, but I think that we should go ahead and just decide this case now, get it over with so that this thing doesn't stretch out for months and months on end.
So, Mitch, a lot that you are walking us through this morning. So the temporary stay, from what you've told us in the past, that the stay is what's blocking the State Board of Elections from actually certifying the results. So is the stay still in effect, even with them moving this down to this lower superior court? How is that shaking out?
Yes, the temporary stay remains in effect until everything is resolved, and that was the part of the order that caused a dissent from Anita Earl. She agreed with the rest of the court that the case shouldn't be in the state Supreme Court, that if it's going to be anywhere in the state court system, it needs to be at a superior court level. But she complained about the temporary stay remaining in effect because in her view, that basically is the Supreme Court saying there's a legitimate reason for this order to be blocked, rather than allowing the superior court to go ahead and deal with that issue and decide whether there was a good reason to block this court or not. So yes, the temporary stay remains in effect. The State Board of Elections can't do anything unless either the state Supreme Court decides to lift the stay or the Fourth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals comes out with some sort of ruling that would require the state Supreme Court to take some other action. One of the latest court filings that we saw in this case was Jefferson Griffin's filing in the Fourth Circuit, where he basically said, look, Fourth Circuit, you can't order the state Supreme Court to do anything. All you could really do is tell Chief Judge Myers at the federal district court level to request the case back from the state Supreme Court, but You can't order the state Supreme Court to do anything, and neither can Myers. So it'll be very interesting to see what the Fourth Circuit says when all is said and done.
Mitch, I have some additional questions for you as it regards to this being sent down to a lower court. We'll discuss that coming up after this. Mitch Kokai joins us on the Carolina Journal News Hour. Where it's now 5:14, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. Let's get a look at traffic this morning with Boomer Von Cannon.
Hey, good morning, Nick.
It's 5:20. Welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour. News Talk 1110 99.3 WBT. We are streaming live this morning on our Carolina Journal YouTube channel. You can take the show with you on the go by downloading the Carolina Journal News Hour podcast. Wherever you get your shows, just search for the Carolina Journal News Hour. Tap the subscribe or follow button, and you'll take the show with you on demand on your own time. It's the Carolina Journal News Hour podcast. Download and subscribe now. On Friday of last week, so 1 week ago, Western Carolina University found Peyton McNabb, quote, not responsible following a Title IX hearing concerning reports of sexual harassment made against McNabb concerning her encounter with what she believed to be a biological male in the women's restroom at the university. Back in May, McNabb confronted a student who she believed to be a biological male in the women's restroom at WCU. The day after the incident, she was reported to the university for alleged transphobia. Civil rights attorney Ellis Boyle commented saying, quote, we are sad that she had to go through this process. She never intended to harm any individuals. She was merely trying to exercise her free speech rights about a concern that is very much an open debate and an open topic of debate in America. She is glad that she had the opportunity to explain her position and agrees with the panel's findings that she was not responsible for violating any version of WCU's Title IX policy. 3 elements were needed to prove sexual harassment: severe, pervasive, and objective offenses. All 3 of those elements could not be proven, and McNabb was found, quote, not responsible under the policy. It is important to note that this was not a legal proceeding in a court of law. No lawsuit was filed and no legal charges were brought against the student and Peyton McNabb. This was an internal proceeding over at WCU. However, that internal proceeding is now said and done, and she was found not responsible for that Title IX hearing. You can view the original video and some of her comments this morning by visiting our website, carolinajournal.com, and check out Katie Zender's story there on the website, carolinajournal.com. It's 5:22. You're listening to the Carolina Journal News Hour. We are continuing our discussion this morning with Mitch Kokai from the John Locke Foundation as he continues to track details out of the North Carolina Supreme Court race between Allison Riggs and Jefferson Griffin. Mitch, as you have already gone over this morning, this is now being sent back to a superior court here in North Carolina. Explain exactly what that means for this case going forward, at least in your eyes.
So the Superior Court is the trial court level, and this is where you would normally have expected Jefferson Griffin to file a complaint in the first place. When you file a complaint, file a civil lawsuit, you file it in the Superior Court. He jumped straight to the state Supreme Court, and that's one of the reasons why the Supreme Court said, no, we can't take this up now. It belongs at Superior Court. That's the procedure you're supposed to follow. So the Superior Court, it should be one judge sitting in Wake County, will hold a hearing, and potentially there could be as many as 3 hearings, but my guess is it will be one hearing for all 3 lawsuits involving the 3 different types of ballot challenges that Jefferson Griffin has. There will be some sort of hearing. The judge will issue some sort of ruling, either saying, yes, this idea has merit and these ballots should be thrown out, which would be something that would be appealed. Or he'll say, no, there's no merit to these challenges. I'm going to throw this lawsuit out, and that would be appealed. So it'll probably end up at some point getting back before the state Supreme Court. That's one of the reasons why Justice Tamara Beringer, I think, said, let's just go ahead and deal with this now. It's going to come back to us anyway. Why force people to go through more days, weeks, maybe even months before this gets resolved? But the Superior Court will hold the typical hearing that you would have in the case of a civil complaint, a civil lawsuit. And then it's almost certain that whatever the Superior Court does decide will end up getting appealed and will end up back before the state Supreme Court.
So we're very much stretching this piece of twine out almost as far as it can go, Mitch. Now we turn our attention to the Fourth Circuit case. That has everything to do with this being sent back to the state Supreme Court, where the case is no longer, it's now in Superior Court. Does that make things any more complicated up there, or is essentially everything still the same there?
No, it could complicate things because, as we were talking about in the last segment, what the Fourth Circuit can actually do in this case is not entirely clear. The State Board of Elections and what Allison Riggs would like the Fourth Circuit to do is to order the federal trial court judge in this case, Richard Myers, to somehow get the case back from the state Supreme Court. They'd like for the Fourth Circuit to order Myers to order or to somehow strongly suggest that the state Supreme Court send the case back to federal court. But Jefferson Griffin's court filing in the Fourth Circuit suggests there really is no mechanism to do that. Once Judge Myers sent the case back to state Supreme Court, and he did it very quickly. Once he issued his ruling, it went back that same day, along with all of the paperwork that needed to be done. And that's something that's atypical. Usually it takes a couple of days and there's chance for appeal. But Judge Myers moved that case very quickly. And so he really doesn't have any formal mechanism that allows him to take the case back. So it'll be interesting to see what the Fourth Circuit decides if they think that Judge Myers should handle this case. How will they go about telling him that he should get the case? And then does he really have any kind of power to get the case back for the state Supreme Court? And if so, does that mean the state Supreme Court then needs to go back and say, no, we were wrong. Give us the case back, Superior Court. Then we'll give it back to Judge Myers, and then he'll issue some sort of decision. It's very complicated. The other thing that we should mention is we're getting closer and closer to the time that the state Supreme Court comes back into session to hear cases. They're scheduled to hear oral arguments again on February 11th. Allison Riggs, who is the sitting incumbent justice, will be sitting on the court even if the election is not resolved. But she has asked the Fourth Circuit for some type of ruling that would get this entire thing resolved by the time that she is hearing cases or is scheduled to hear cases with her colleagues again on February 11th.
So that was going to be kind of my final question here. Where do we stand right now with the timeline? A week from tomorrow is the first day of February. You talked about that deadline, well, not a deadline, but the date, February the 11th, when the Supreme Court gets back into session. It seems to me from what you're describing that this timeline has been stretched out even more now, because no matter who ends up victorious in the Superior Court, it is likely to be appealed and kind of start that clock all over again.
Yeah, it certainly would start the clock again. Now, the thing that will help shorten it is that all of the arguments that have been made to the state Supreme Court have probably already been made. They may throw a few more pages of paperwork at the Supreme Court, but not a whole lot more. It would basically just be saying, look, the Superior Court got it right, or the Superior Court got it wrong. State Supreme Court, what do you think? And then the case would be resolved. But I think it is becoming less and less likely that we would see some sort of final decision by the time the state Supreme Court comes back on February 11th. Now, in terms of the technical aspects of how the Supreme Court operates, that might not be too much of a problem because Riggs is the incumbent. She's sitting on the court. She is also the leader in the election and is probably going to end up winning. If that's true, then there won't be really a whole lot of change between what happened at the end of 2024 and what's going to happen in 2025. It'll be the same 7 people, the same partisan breakdown, 5 Republicans, 2 Democrats. And perhaps the only thing that will happen is that at some point after the court starts hearing cases, you will finally see some sort of resolution to this election.
We're going to continue to keep a very close eye on that. We appreciate Mitch's time this morning. Mitch Kokai joins us on the Carolina Journal News Hour. Where it's now 5:29, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. Another look at traffic on your Friday morning with Boomer Von Cannon.
Hey, thank you.
It's 5:35. Welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour on a Friday morning. News Talk 1110 99.3 WBT. Recapping one of our breaking stories out of Washington, D.C. this morning. President Donald Trump has signed a memorandum directing the Secretary of the Interior to submit a plan within 90 days to assist the Lumbee tribe in portions of southeastern North Carolina to obtain full federal recognition. That full federal recognition would provide them access to federal services and benefits, including health care through the Indian Health Service, as well as eligibility for federal funding programs supporting housing, education, and economic development. Trump, in a September rally in Wilmington of last year, promised full federal recognition if he was to be elected in November. That obviously came to fruition, and now he is following up on that promise. Earlier this year, Representative David Rouser, who serves the 7th Congressional District in North Carolina, introduced the Lumbee Fairness Act that was in the 119th Congress of 2025, which would grant full federal recognition and benefits to the tribe. The memorandum signed by Trump claims, considering the Lumbee tribe's historical and modern significance, it is the policy of the United States to support the full federal recognition, including the authority to receive full federal benefits. With multiple executive orders being signed at the White House yesterday, Trump had this to say last night.
Next, sir, we have a presidential memorandum encouraging departments and agencies in your government, including the Department of the Interior, to promote federal recognition of the Lumbee tribe of North Carolina.
I love the Lumbee tribe. So this is their first big step, right?
This would be a huge step for them, sir.
Yeah, they were with me all the way. They were great. North Carolina, Lumbee tribe.
The president will be making his way to North Carolina today, Western North Carolina, his first stop before he heads to Southern California to check on the status of wildfires in the Los Angeles area. North Carolina House Representative Jared Lowry, who represents Robeson County and is also a member of the Lumbee tribe, told the Carolina Journal last night, quote, "I am thankful for President Trump continuing to keep his promise to bring justice to the Lumbee people. The Secretary of the Interior is directed to find a path for recognition through an act of Congress, judicial action, or the procedures for federal acknowledgement of Indian tribes." Now, the U.S. House has repeatedly voted in favor of granting the Lumbees full federal recognition. That happened most recently as late last year. However, the U.S. Senate has yet to approve the measure. North Carolina did grant state recognition to the Lumbee tribe back in 1885, while the tribe gained a partial federal recognition back in the 1950s. They have yet to achieve that full federal status that they have long been pushing for. So this is a breaking story this morning, and we'll track the progress over the next, 3 months, 90 days, as Trump has ordered his Secretary of the Interior to have a plan on his desk. It's now 5:39. You're listening to the Carolina Journal News Hour. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is being shaken up at the federal level with the new Trump administration. However, some of those impacts are making their way here to North Carolina. To get some additional details on that this morning, it's my pleasure to welcome Brianna Kramer, CarolinaJournal.com, to the News Hour this morning. Brianna, we've seen a lot out of the Trump administration in just the last couple of days, a couple of executive orders, and even in Trump's inauguration talking about DEI. What's the latest that you're tracking this morning in terms of statewide updates and news on that?
Yes, that's right, Nick. Trump signed an executive order on Wednesday that terminates diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives in the federal workforce. And then on Thursday, North Carolina State Auditor Dave Bolek and Labor Commissioner Luke Farley, both of them announced that they will prohibit DEI initiatives from being used as a factor in their respective state agencies' hiring practices here in North Carolina.
This is obviously something that Trump campaigned on, and we're seeing this mandate at the federal level. It appears to be trickling down to the state. Did you hear from either of those two individuals? What was their reasoning or rationale behind scrapping these DEI offices?
Yes, so Labor Commissioner Luke Farley said the department would immediately end DEI metrics in evaluating employee performance and in the hiring process. Farley said he would also add a performance measure related to safety and health to ensure that Department of Labor employees are held to the same standards required of North Carolina employers. So in a statement he posted on X, he said, "From this point forward, we will hire and evaluate employees based on merit and on their ability to fulfill our mission to protect the health, safety, and well-being of North Carolinians." And he said, "Ultimately, my goal is to hire and retain qualified professional individuals who will provide excellent service to our state." So really a big focus on merit. That's what Trump was saying the other day as well, that, we don't want to continue with DEI initiatives that don't actually value an individual's skill set and puts characteristics over top of their true talent and merit. And so Luke Farley was on the same page as Trump. And then just a couple hours later, State Auditor Dave Bullock announced that his agency would also eliminate DEI from its internal policies, including any training, performance requirements, preferencing, and directives. So he was along the same lines as well, that DEI is divisive and it really brings no return on investment of time or resources.
It's very interesting as we look at DEI as a whole. It's a business that really kind of spawned up not truly that long ago. It's now at the point where it's a $10+ billion industry year after year. However, in just the last couple of months, Brianna, even ahead of Trump's win in November and then his inauguration earlier this week, you've seen major corporations on the national stage kind of do a major switch on DEI, and now you're seeing it take place in government. What do you attribute some of that to?
Yeah, that's right. We've seen over the past year or so, organizations and companies start to pivot. DEI was like a popular trend for a while, but we've kind of seen the negative impacts of what DEI truly is, the divisive nature and the foregoing of talent and what an individual brings from who they are as a person, and rather focusing on not like true merit and rather just your characteristics. So we saw the UNC Board of Governors also pivot away from DEI in the spring of 2024. And so really it's kind of a start to bringing back this focus on value and the value of the employee and what you have to offer, and less on what makes you special because of your status or because they're trying to, get to a certain quota. So I think it's a good thing that we're seeing, and we're going to continue to see it within North Carolina and at the national level with Trump signing this executive order.
And there's also a huge legal risk to this. Brianna, you covered a story almost a year ago to the day over in Buncombe County, in which the school system there had an internship program that was explicitly discriminating against white and Asian students there. We're now seeing some new complaints filed against Buncombe County dealing with some Title VI restrictions due to hurricane relief. There are some real-life impacts and implications for some of these DEI programs.
Yeah, real life implications that have been going on for years. And so now in just the recent weeks with, Trump now in the White House and the takeover in Congress, it's starting to feel like a wake-up call for universities and, these mega corporations that have been pushing these practices on to their employees and students for years, from the local level, high schools, as you just mentioned in Buncombe County, all the way to, massive corporations. It's been infiltrating a lot of the culture. And so I think we're going to be seeing a shift now with these orders coming down from the federal government and then starting to work their way into parts of the North Carolina state government. Not all, of course, with, the divided executive branch, but we'll see a little bit from those who are Republican in office.
For folks that want to read more from Luke Farley and Dave Bullock, where do they do that this morning?
Sure. Go to carolinajournal.com and you can read the latest over there.
Brianna Kramer joins us this morning on the Carolina Journal News Hour. Where it's now 5:45, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. We'll get another look at your traffic on a Friday morning with the great Boomer Von Cannon.
There you go again, Nick.
Good morning again, and welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour. News Talk 1110 99.3 WBT. Recapping one of our top stories this morning, the North Carolina Supreme Court has ruled 5-1 to send Republican state Supreme Court candidate Jefferson Griffin's election challenge back to a Wake County Superior Court, denying his request to bypass the trial court and block over 65,000 votes in his race against Democrat Allison Riggs. The court maintained a temporary stay that prevents the State Board of Elections from certifying Riggs's narrow 734-vote lead until the lower court resolves the case. The justices issued separate opinions reflecting a divided perspectives on the legal and procedural issues at hand. Chief Justice Paul Newby and other concurring justices defended Griffin's right to challenge the election, citing public trust in election integrity and concerns about election procedures. Democrat Justice Anita Earls dissented on leaving the temporary stay in place, warning that it could incentivize baseless election challenges and undermine confidence in democracy. The decision coincides with upcoming oral arguments in the 4th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals on related federal issues. Griffin's legal team has requested a delay in the federal hearing following the state Supreme Court ruling, while Riggs and the election board oppose a postponement. So that is slated to head your way coming up on Monday, when the 4th U.S. Circuit will hear this case, and we'll just kind of patiently waiting to see what they will decide. But that is the latest that we are tracking this morning, as we at this point are now almost some 3 months from the election that took place in November. Still tracking those details here on the Carolina Journal News Hour and over on our website, carolinajournal.com. Well, 1 week ago, Western Carolina University found Peyton McNabb not responsible following a Title IX hearing concerning reports of sexual harassment that were made against McNabb concerning an encounter she had with what she believed to be a biological male in the women's restroom at Western Carolina University. This happened back in May of last year. McNabb confronted a student who she believed to be a biological male for being in the women's restroom at WCU. She posted that video on social media, her confrontation with the individual. The day after the incident, she was reported to WCU for alleged transphobia, posting on her X account at the time, quote, Currently, I'm facing reports to the school for alleged transphobia, alongside my attempts to tear down my sorority, despite it having nothing to do with it. I believe in everyone's right to have their own opinion, and I shouldn't face punishment simply because I felt uncomfortable. Ellis Boyle, who is a civil rights attorney, told Carolina Journal, quote, We are sad to see that she had to go through this process. She never intended to harm any individuals. She was merely trying to exercise her free speech rights about a concern that is very much an open debate and an open topic of debate in America. She is glad that she had the opportunity to explain her positions and agrees with the panel's findings that she was not responsible for violating any version of WCU's Title IX policy. 3 elements were needed to prove sexual harassment: severe, pervasive, and objective offenses. All of 3 of those elements could not be proven, and McNabb was found, quote, not responsible under WCU's policy. It is important to note, and I'll pass along to you this morning, that this was not a legal proceeding that took place in a court of law. No lawsuit was filed and no legal charges were brought against the student and Peyton McNabb. This was an internal proceeding that took place at WCU, and it did not rise to those 3 elements. So as of this morning, Peyton McNabb found not responsible for those Title IX violations. And recapping our top breaking story this morning, President Donald Trump signing a memorandum in the Oval Office yesterday evening, directing his Secretary of the Interior to submit a plan to assist the Lumbee tribe in obtaining full federal recognition. This is something that the Lumbee tribe has sought now for decades. In granting full federal recognition, which I will note has not been done yet, Trump has just directed his Secretary of the Interior to submit a plan for this to happen. But if this were to move forward, the tribe based in Robeson County would be provided with access to federal services and benefits. That includes health care through the Indian Health Services, as well as eligibility for some federal programs that could support and would support housing, education, and economic development. Earlier this year, the Lumbee Fairness Act, H.R. 474, was introduced in the 119th Congress, granting full federal recognition and benefits to the North Carolina tribe. The memorandum that was signed by Trump yesterday says, quote, "Considering the Lumbee tribe's historical and modern significance, it is the policy of the United States to support the full federal recognition, including the authority to receive full federal benefits." During the signing ceremony, or during the memorandum signing yesterday, Trump quoted saying, "I love the Lumbee tribe. They were with me all the way. They were great." North Carolina House Representative Jared Lowry, who is a member of the Lumbee tribe, told CarolinaJournal.com yesterday, "I'm thankful for President Trump continuing to keep his promise to bring justice to the Lumbee people." U.S. Senator Thom Tillis, amongst many other individuals, chiming in on X, saying, quote, "Now Congress must do its job, fulfill its promise, and pass the Lumbee Fairness Act to make this federally recognized law." The U.S. House, in years past, has repeatedly voted in favor of granting the Lumbee tribe full federal recognition. However, it has not since moved forward in the Senate. North Carolina did grant state recognition back in 1885, while the Lumbee tribe did receive some partial federal recognition in 1956. So we'll continue to track that over on our website, CarolinaJournal.com. That's going to do it for a Friday edition of the Carolina Journal News Hour. We are back Monday morning 5 to 6 right here on News Talk 1110 and 99.3 WBT.